Well, the Lane Kiffin story is the gift that keeps giving in the talk show business for a number of reasons. Let me say this, because there's a lot here, and there's room for a lot of opinions. Reasonable people, it's a great way to start a show, right? But reasonable people with a moral compass have to be watching things play out in the industry that is college football, and they must be thinking, your industry, an industry full of public universities. Okay, remember, these aren't just minor league franchises. These are public universities. But this reasonable and moral person that is watching things play out over the past few months in the industry of college football, that person must think the industry of college football makes prostitution look righteous. I'd like to use a cartel analogy, but I'll say this for college football. I don't think they kill people. But otherwise, any normal, reasonable person would say, at best, you're slimy. Yeah, I said prostitution. You got one better? Go ahead. The non-blue blood programs, okay? And, we don't have to define those, but you get the idea. The non-blue blood programs, at some point, have to fight back. See if you follow me on this. See if you agree with me on this. I think they have to fight back at some point. And I don't know what form that's going to take. And I can explain to you how this Kiffin thing is like a hand grenade into this industry. The question, of course, is the non-blue bloods, the ultra rich that will spend any amount of money to win. They will poach. They will tamper. They will run over. They will cheat. And yes, I'm going to now start saying cheating. And the non-blue bloods are just getting run completely over. How will they fight back? Feel free to disagree. Lane Kiffin is the most talked about man in sports right now. It's not even close. And he's the most talked about person in sports, not because people care about LSU or Ole Miss. I think this thing is what we're about to talk about on top of all the other issues, I think transcends the obsession the South has with college football. The rest of the country doesn't care like the Deep South. College football doesn't mean to the rest of the country what it means to the Deep South. But he is, and the story of him, and I think everyone's missing something, he's talk show chum in the water because of all this story represents. I think this is much bigger issues than just a coach leaving. What do you think of that kind of stuff? It creates ethical debates all over the place. The ethical issues are plainly obvious. Is it ethical to take a job with a competitor? Anybody can relate to this. Now, you can't relate to getting $14 million to leave, but people can relate to this. Do you take a job with a direct competitor when you've got a job already and you're in the middle of a project already? In this case, you're in the middle of the best run the school has ever had. If you leave, you don't even see it out. Is it unethical, or is it, to be fair, just bad timing? I think it's a really fair debate. That debate is fair. I'll also say this before we get to bigger ethical issues, because I think there is something that it has to happen. There has to be a fight here pretty soon. And that is, he's a guy, just to talk about the football part of this, Lane Kiffin is a guy that has won a single championship as a head coach. And LSU is already paying $54 million to have a coach go away after that coach lost to ranked teams number 3, 5, and 9. So what exactly is going to be the metric that LSU uses to decide if this was a good deal? I assume I know. I assume it's win a national championship or else. And the or else for these fools is, or else we'll just have to pay to go away like everyone else. But surely the only barometer is a national championship. It can't be playoff appearances. It can't be 11-win seasons. It can't be beating Alabama sometimes. Can we agree the guy that has never won a trophy as a head coach had better win a national championship. Can we agree anything less is a failure? And I think that needs to be stated more often, not just about Kiffin and LSU, but it needs to be stated at blue blood programs like Texas and USC and Notre Dame and Alabama, all that stuff. I mean, can we not at least arrive at this place where we're no longer listening to these coaches do this mortar syndrome of, oh, you don't know how tough it is for us? I think, see if you agree with this. I think the industry, whether it's fair that Kiffin has done this to the coaching industry or not, I think the industry is lacking a great deal of credibility. And I don't think the people that pay them this money or the people that watch them on TV or the people that pay money to go watch a game in person, I don't think you should be cutting them any slack. I think you should be saying at the Blue Bloods, you ought to win a national championship or otherwise shut your face. I think this industry just keeps looking worse and worse and worse and making more and more excuses when you're paid insane amounts of money. So the question, of course, though, for Kiffin would be, and I think this applies to the next blue blood that hires the next multi-million-dollar coach, because the pay scale is not going backwards. It's going to keep escalating. The buyouts are just going to keep escalating. How long should it take him? Right? I mean, what's a reasonable amount? They've had 3 different head coaches, 2 of whom have been fired by LSU, have won national championships. So how long does he have? Can I set the over-under at 4? You want to say 3 or 4? Now, of course, then you get paid to go away, but I think that seems reasonable. Some might even say 2. Sure. Yeah. But I say all that because of what he said. And this is, I think, we get into some bigger issues here. He said the money paid to him didn't matter. In fact, I think you're going to love, if you haven't heard this already, I think you're going to really love what he had to say about the money. But, and here's what I think is being missed again and again and again. But the money mattered. Do you understand where I'm going to go with this? The money paid to him, he says, didn't matter. But he did say what mattered the most was the money. Here goes. There's a bunch of debates. It's all fair game. I think it's all worthwhile. I think any direction you go with this, I think the irresponsible thing to do right now in the opinion world, which is perfectly fine, is you can go any way you want. To not judge this, to not judge college football, I think is a terrible mistake. To let pandering suck-up coaches get away with whining about stuff, I think is a giant mistake right now. I think the public and the media should be reacting any number of ways. Letting this go and letting this industry go and skate by with what he's now advocating, I think is a mistake. Let's see, who's up first? Is that Dave Portnoy sitting in his home office with a bad-looking hat on? Okay, here goes Dave Portnoy from Barstool Sports.
What a wild weekend. Lane Kiffin is clearly the number one story, a fascinating story, everything that you want about college football, right? I mean, him quitting, the reporter who called him a hoe, we can say hoe. I hopefully that's a direct quote for all the people. I guess if you said it about the Scarlet and Gold, we'd be getting phone calls, but you can say it probably about Lane. So, you can't, what the quote, and I believe he originally said the quote was from 3 6 Mafia, I think is Ludacris, right?
Ludacris, yes.
Yeah. You can't make a hoe a housewife.
Yep.
Dead on. And I said it in real time. I said this quote, and Lane makes a big deal out of it Lane really kicked off the fireworks, right? By doing a Huey in the parking lot, coming back to the kid, be like, "Oh, you called me a hoe? You want to meet me in the tunnel? We're gonna have a problem." And then you look at the quote, it's like he didn't really call him a hoe, and that kicked it off. And off we went with this entire saga that's been hanging on. So he leaves. He wants to coach. He wants to take the players. You hear he's holding them hostage. He goes to the plane. They're booing him. I mean, this is right out of Friday Night Lights. I was waiting for, who's the guy Friday Night Lights, like Boogie whatever? I was waiting, Boogie Miles.
Boogie Miles. Put Boogie in, let Boogie
for him to
spin.
come walking out. I mean, this is... And yeah, you feel bad for some of the players, right? Like you have this great season.
We probably could have left it ho, but still missing it. Everyone's missing it. There's something bigger. It's far bigger. It's far more dangerous. It's far more sinister. I think this is the problem in a media world that doesn't have much depth. There's far bigger issues than whether you want to call him a hoe or not. Then next up, just to prove to you this thing is sort of escalating up, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think this is exactly the spotlight that needs to be on the industry of college football. Anyone who separates out football from public universities, I think that is disgusting. If you went to one of these schools, you have skin in the game, and it is embarrassing. This industry is slimy, not just because of Kiffin. What Kiffin said and what will come after what Kiffin said is the worst part of this. Here goes Stephen A. Smith and Brandon's favorite, future Senator Paul Feinbaum.
Stephen A. Smith, I don't know when you became so naive, because Cam Newton laid it out perfectly. This isn't tantamount to insider trading. You're going to let him run this team while he's recruiting coaches and players. That's the reality. I agree. The calendar is a disaster, but that's what we have right now. And it's also not only about Ole Miss letting him do this or LSU. This is about who Lane Kiffin is. He's always ready to leave. Do you understand what I'm about to tell you? I'm going to say it again. 3 years ago, Auburn had an opening. Lane Kiffin almost accepted it. He was this close. But why didn't he go, Stephen A. Smith? Because his daughter asked him not to. He loved it in Ole Miss. 2 years ago, Alabama had an opening. Lane Kiffin's calling everybody and his brother, begging for the job, begging for an interview. He didn't get it because he was toxic and nobody at Alabama wanted to deal with him. Now he's a hot coach again. You can relate to that, Stephen A. And everybody wants him. Oh, by the way, one thing. Last year, had Florida fired its coach, Lane Kiffin would have gone there. This is not only about LSU. This is about Lane Kiffin and who he is as a person. He's a great coach, but that's not the entire package. Yes, LSU's a better job than Ole Miss. Everybody in America knows that. But there's such a thing as when you accept a job, when you make a commitment to a bunch of young people, you should fulfill it. And Lane Kiffin has never done that in his career.
6 years. He was there for 6 years, number one. And by the way, let's keep this in mind. Let's keep it a buck here, Paul. When you talk about him always looking to leave, he wasn't looking to leave USC. He got booted out, that bad boy. He liked life in Southern California, but they didn't like him. So he got booted out of there, okay? Alabama, so let's not blame him for everything now. Alabama, he got fired the week before the national championship game, okay? Deservedly so. Fair enough. You're talking here about this particular situation with Ole Miss. What I'm saying to you is Ole Miss knew, if you knew he was interested in Alabama, so did Ole Miss. If you knew he was interested in Auburn, so did Ole Miss. If you knew he was interested in Florida, so did Ole Miss. What did they do? They kept him anyway. And they rode those coattails to national prominence, which is what he delivered. And to know that he did that, all I'm saying to you is that let's not engage in excoriating this man over this particular scenario. If you want to bring up all the stuff in the past,
okay, that's good. We've got a future senator debating here and the future president of the United States. That's nice. You're missing the points. This is all debating on sort of the superficial level of a incredibly slimy industry. But everyone, I think, is missing the bigger point. Remember what I said? He went public and said, and I'm going to read you the quote, said the money didn't matter to him, but the money mattered. What nobody is talking about, because nobody wants to acknowledge the elephant in the room. It's not a quiet elephant in the room because he said it to everyone. It was in a horrible industry with no rules, no ethics whatsoever. He tossed a hand grenade out there that nobody seems to even be noticing. But I tell you who should notice. Everybody who's not an ultra-rich blue blood with a bunch of sugar daddies. You ought to be fighting mad, all of you, and not just Ole Miss. The elephant in the room with the Lane Kiffin story. Not that corruption in the state of Louisiana is a very new thing. But the thing is, he promised name, image, and likeness money. Kiffin says that's what drew him to the job. Here is the Yahoo headline. Lane Kiffin touts NIL money as at LSU over his contract as motivation to leave Ole Miss. Not that anybody cares, but that's against the rules. The money they're promising, the money they promised him, which he in turn promised the marketplace, isn't the way it's supposed to work. And you know how we know that? Because they just signed off on a deal that they wouldn't do that. And they just told you we're going to do it. In fact, I left my job here to take that job so we could cheat and tell you we're cheating. Okay, here's the story. This is Yahoo. The first question Kiffin faced about why he chose to leave an 11-1 Mississippi program that he built into a national contender while he's on the verge of a college football playoff. He said he made the decision Saturday night. And I've already said, I find it unethical. There's tampering issues. And I finally found a coach who's addressed the tampering issues. It's just incredibly unethical, and the NFL would never tolerate it. But I think him leaving at the time that he did to take the job, I think is silly. I think it's unethical. I think your lawyer telling LSU, I'm in a great run right now, and I'm rich doing it. So tell them I'll talk to them once the season is over if they still want to talk. I think that's perfectly reasonable. I think it would have been the right thing to do. But it's an industry that has no moral compass. So he said he talked to the athletic director at Ole Miss, continuing to coach the program to the rest of the season, even though he had just taken a job at a rival program. You know, you can debate whether you would have kept him on, even though he'd already taken another job. Okay. Kiffin says, and I quote, "We tried every possible thing for a long time the other night. We presented how that could be done and give the players their best chance to win in the playoffs. And at the end of the day, that's their decision. I respect that." As for the money, Kiffin said the money played no factor in his decision. He claims he told his agent to not even tell him on the final negotiations. Here's a quote. "I said throughout the process, I'm never going to make a decision on money. Except you did. I'm telling you now," this is a quote, "I don't know what my contract even says. That's not very financially responsible, but I'm sure it's really good. I don't know what it is, nor do I know at the other place what the numbers were. I said in the beginning, don't tell me the numbers. I want to make a decision that has nothing to do with money for me." Believe that if you want. He did say that his agent told him Monday that all of the contract offers he received were similar in compensation, but it was the name, image, and likeness money that LSU offered that swayed him. He says in the end, but in the process of figuring out NIL packages, those were not similar. Those were not the same. That's a big part of the reason why I decided to come here. You're going to think, okay, what's the big deal? I'm going to tell you again what the big deal is, particularly after they've agreed to not do this. Name, image, and likeness, as I've told you from the very beginning. It's a scam. It's a lie. It's a glorified money laundering program. It's a way for schools to avoid making college athletes employees. LSU hired a guy by telling everyone, we'll break the rules. Then he told everyone he took the job because we'll break the rules. What's even better, and this is where I think sooner or later there has to be a fight. Even better, they'll break the rules they just agreed to. If I'm Ole Miss, or if I'm anybody else, I'd be very quick to point out the state school that promised money to players in a way we all agreed to not do business, the coach they just left for the promise of a payroll for players, even though the entire league agreed we would not do that. So he turns around and tells him, I know we signed a deal to not pay the players, and I can explain, but that's why I decided to come here, because we're going to pay the players. They promised me an amount of money to pay the players. Here's a primer on the NIL scam. Okay? I don't think it's reported often enough. You can not care, I guess, but NIL was based on an original legal court case, very legitimate and very righteous, of a basketball player who sued over the use of his image in a video game. Out of that, it worked its way through the court system. When I was in college, there were a few cases just like this. Typically, the players ended up losing. One of them involved a skier who played football, who had an endorsement deal with Oakley, and they required him per his contract to wear Oakley sunglasses on the sideline. He sued for the right to do that, but he lost. So eventually, one of these, I got an advertising client that's paying me, cases went through. And so out of that, the court ultimately ruled that a school has no right to prevent you from getting paid for your legitimate market purposes when it comes to endorsement deals, and they use the term name, image, and likeness. I'm sure there's some legal significance to that. What came out of that was a bunch of lying and a scam. So out of that case, usually, this is how college sports is run, rich men who are desperate to own a team decide, screw it. Why don't we just, seems like an entree to pay the players ourselves, why don't we just start giving them some cash and we'll call it name, image, and likeness, even though there's no advertising deal in sight. So that's what's been happening. It's not at all, at no point was it at all what the legal case was about. As true in college sports, it is hijacked by rich men who say, we've got more money than they do. I want to win, so let's just spend the money. That's why I call it a sugar daddy sport. It has not changed in decades. So over time, over the last couple of years, a lot of programs, particularly in the Southeast Conference, I remember doing a podcast segment where it blew up and people took it the wrong way. And I said, one of the big problems is where college football is king, where there's most passion, are schools and alumni bases that can't keep up with the funding of someone like Texas or USC or SMU. Rich men who want to spend money on the program. So I said, they're going to have a problem. They're going to realize, and this is why you saw morons like Senator Tommy Tuberville coming forward, Nick Saban, I think, leaving the sport altogether, realizing, oh my gosh, we've owned the sport all these decades, and all of a sudden, because of this loophole these rich guys have discovered, they're going to take our sport away from us. We got to do something here. And they were part of the early push to say, we need some rules. They didn't come out and say it, but it's pretty obvious. They realized, man, if I'm Clemson or I'm Mississippi State or someone, SMU and Texas can buy everyone they want. They have a parking lot of Lamborghinis, and that's not a joke. This is not many places that can pull that off. And so they said, this is unfair. This is not about recruiting. It's not about the school. It's not about the football program. It's just about how much money you can funnel these guys. And I know a lot of you are going to say, I don't care. But here's the reason why this is going to should create a giant problem. So they said, we got to do something about this. And one of the leaders in doing this was the Southeast Conference. We need some rules. We need someone who can take the legal case and implement it in a realistic way. The legal case was about legitimate endorsement deals. Got it? Not some guy meeting you in an alley, giving you a bunch of cash every Thursday. It was about the marketplace. It was based on a legal precedent. So they created a commission. They hired a guy to run the commission. Most people don't know this. He was former prosecutor. And one of the primary things that he was supposed to do is create a system of independent arbitrators that would say, if you have Jeff Ward has what he calls a name, image, and likeness deal, Well, present that to us, and we can decide if it's a legitimate marketplace endorsement deal, per the case. Not somebody just funneling money to you. The schools agreed to that. They agreed to it. So you understand, if I'm Red Bull and I want to hire a college football player, I can go through that college football player's agent. I go directly to him. Well, however we want to do it. The school doesn't take my money and spend the advertising dollars themselves. That's not how the advertising business works. And it's not what the court case was. So Kiffin takes a job and says, they promised me more money for the guys. In other words, we're going to pay the guys directly. They agreed to enforce the rules that were set in place. Every conference has done the same. Texas Tech just 2 weeks ago said, I don't know if we want to sign that deal. You know why they don't want to sign that deal? Because they don't want to lose the advantage they have. Makes sense. So the leagues agreed to follow this. And now LSU and their $14 million per year coach are promising money. Now, how could they be doing that if the deals are between the players and the advertisers? What does Lane Kiffin know about Red Bull endorsement deals? What does he know about Mercedes? Or we can go down the list. So if you're Ole Miss, you're thinking, let me get this straight. It wasn't about the money, but it's about the money. And we all agreed just 2 weeks ago we were going to, if a player had an endorsement deal, and I promise you, okay, there's only a market of one, and his name is Manning. Red Bull is not hiring Ole Miss football players. You can't name a commercial, a national commercial that features an LSU football player. There is no market for these guys. Okay? If you know of a real market that's paying them a lot of money, let's hear it, because I don't know of any. And if you ran a company, you wouldn't be hiring these guys. It's fake. It's fake. The whole thing is fake. It's a fake deal. And Kiffin just turned around and promised it to everyone. Did he not? Did he not? That's why he took the job, because they told me these guys were going to get some money. So he's going to turn around and do what they do in college football and say, who's your agent? Who's your uncle? Who is this person? Hey, you're making what at Ole Miss? 150 grand? We can pay you 200. Wait, I thought that money was supposed to come from Mercedes or Red Bull or fill in the blank. How many national commercials have you seen with LSU football players involved? How many? How many can you name of anyone not named Manning in a national commercial? Tell me. Because that's where the bigger money is. Okay? The amount of money is being promised to these guys that I think Kiffin just said, open Pandora's box and promised these guys, there's not a marketplace. There's none of you. If you were running the Subway sandwich shop in Baton Rouge, yeah, you might hire a football player to do a 30-second commercial. You might. Probably after a while you take it back. I promise you, you're not paying them $150,000. You might pay them $150. So this fake market that has ruled this sport, that is trampling anyone that's not a blue blood, then went right to the forefront when the coach at LSU promised everyone the money and said, that's why I took the job, even though the conference said we're not going to do that. We've agreed not to do that. If you're Ole Miss, you're thinking, wait a second, man. We signed the agreement that said if you have an advertising deal, you go through this commission, and if you want to run it through an independent arbitrator so they can decide if it's really a legitimate advertising deal. We all signed off on that, and we just heard the guy that you just poached pretty much say took the job so the guys can get paid. And I'm sure he's right. So now you're going to say, well, nobody follows those rules, Jeff. Well, why'd you all agree to it then? I bet you Ole Miss wants to follow the rules. I bet you Mississippi State would like to follow the rules. I bet Arkansas would like to follow the rules. I bet TCU, I bet we can go down the list. I bet Oklahoma State would like to follow those rules they agreed to. So what's stopping Ole Miss or anyone else from saying right now, right away? Because this is where I think this has to happen. Or you can just let this keep going. But what happens is, Ole Miss becomes a feeder system. Ole Miss becomes just like UTSA. A good player, he's gone. A good coach, gone. There are no tampering rules. There's no poaching rules. There's no contracts whatsoever. Nobody even lives by the contracts. You don't do this in the NFL. But these programs, if you want to say, well, Jeff, that's just the pecking order. That's the way it works. Well, why did LSU sign an agreement that everyone else signed? That everyone else said, we're going to follow the rules. We're not going to funnel money to these guys. We are not going to practice that scam. We've agreed this is not sustainable when you have a bunch of sugar daddies running the sport. So what happens, or would you, if you were Ole Miss, or any of these programs really? But they would really have a right to be pissed. And they would say, okay, who can we talk to? We said we have a commissioner we've all agreed to. Can we talk to him? Because we got a real complaint. The dude's been at the job 1 hour, and he's already screwed us over. They would say, everyone in this league agreed to this. You've promised, okay? A coach you poached away promised money to players. So that's why I took the job. And no, there's not a big market for them. Don't even try it. There's not. It doesn't exist. And not only that, you're using the money you agreed to not use to pay, quite frankly, probably pay Ole Miss players. I mean, isn't that what Lane Kiffin is bragging about? Isn't that exactly what he said when the money's not about me, but it's about the money? I took the job because they said they'll spend. They're not supposed to be spending. The correct sentence would have been, I took the job because I hear that Red Bull, they had that big deal with somebody named Manning, and he's got a big deal because his name is Manning. I heard Red Bull wants to hire a bunch of our players, so I'm optimistic those ad deals get done. And so this is a great place for guys to come because, Louisiana is such a huge marketplace, and LSU football players are so famous. I took the job because I knew advertisers want to hire my players. That's what he really should say if you were following the rules. What would you do if you're everyone else? Because they're going to turn around and offer the money, not from advertising deals. Nope, won't happen. Show me the commercials. Turn around and offer the money to the players who quite possibly could be getting ready for a semifinal game. When that, the other argument is the transfer portal and all that stuff, which is dumb too. But I guess my frustration is this: we're debating the ethics of this move, and there's going to be more of these. We've had these for years, but we're missing the bigger issue. And the have-nots have just thrown it back in their face, and the finger has been pointed at them. We're going to take your coach. We will buy your players. And even though we've agreed not to do it that way, we're going to do it, and you're going to lose again and like it. Hey, here's a recommendation backed up by my own experience, a great experience. And that is, I've been a client of DJC Law, and I can tell you this. You're going to get 3 things with DJC Law. You'll notice it right away. The difference is you will get peace of mind. They will take care of every single detail perfectly, and you will get the result you deserve. If you're injured by the negligence of someone else, fighting with an insurance company for any reason, trust me when I tell you, you will need DJC Law. Dan Christensen and his team of attorneys have a remarkable track record. I've known Dan a long time. He's a military vet. He's board certified in civil trial law, and I've been a client. So you can trust them. You will get the result you deserve. Check out teamjustice.com, and you'll see thousands of 5-star reviews. The bottom line is, if you're in an accident, you need DJC Law. Contact them right away. 512-888-9999.